Welcome back to Dreadful Screams. Tonight's tale takes us to a quiet suburban neighborhood on Halloween night, so turn off your lights, plug in your headphones, and let me take you into a story you'll never forget. Every Halloween you expect a few jump scares, creepy costumes, and too much sugar. But last year I learned something. Some knocks at your door aren't asking for candy. They're asking for something else. Something you can never give back. This story happened in a quiet town in Ohio. A place where nothing bad ever happens. Until the last trick-or-treater came to my door. It was the perfect Halloween night. Chilly air, orange leaves crunching underfoot, and the smell of wood smoke drifting from chimneys. Kids were laughing up and down the street, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I'd gone all out that year. Pumpkin lights, fog machine, and a fake skeleton sitting in a rocking chair by the door. The kind of setup that makes parents smile and kids scream just enough. By 10:30 p.m., the street had gone quiet. Just a few older teens throwing eggs at mailboxes, but the fun was clearly over. I turned off the porch light, the universal signal that candy time was done, and sat back on my couch to watch The Shining. That's when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks on my front door. Deep, deliberate. Like whoever was there didn't want candy. They wanted my attention. I ignored it at first, assuming some kid was pulling a late prank. But then came another set of knocks, and louder this time. And then a voice. Soft. Childlike. Trick or treat. I sighed, grabbed the half-empty candy bowl, and opened the dritter. A little boy stood there, maybe 8 years old. He wore a cheap black robe, the kind you find at the dollar store, and a skull mask with cracks running across the face. But what caught me off guard was his bag. It wasn't a pumpkin pail. It was an old burlap sack heavy enough that it dragged on the porch. And his hands. They were sticky, covered in something dark that looked a lot like dried blood. Trick or treat, he said again. His voice was flat, emotionless. I forced a nervous laugh and dropped a few candies into his sack. Wow, you're out late. Shouldn't you be home by now? He didn't answer, didn't move. Just stared at me, through that cracked skull mask. Then in the softest whisper he asked, "Do you want a trick?" Before I could even process it, the lights above me flickered. The fog machine by the porch coughed and went out. And suddenly my entire house went pitch black. For a few seconds I stood frozen in the dark, my heart pounding. Then the lights came back and he was gone. No footsteps, no laughter, just the empty porch, and a faint trail of red footprints leading off my steps into the fog. I wanted to believe it was just a prank. But the prints were too small, too perfect, and they led nowhere. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that mask, that hollow, cracked skull, staring back at me. The next morning, I told my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, about it. She looked uneasy. Said something strange happened to the family that used to live 2 streets over. Apparently, one Halloween night about 10 years ago, their little boy went missing, last seen wearing a black robe and skull mask. They found his candy bag 2 miles away in the woods, but never found him. I laughed it off, or at least pretended to. But deep down I knew that mask. The cracks, the texture. It looked exactly the same. A week later I was cleaning up my decorations. The fog machine, the lights, the fake skeleton, all going back into storage. I was about to tape the box shut when I noticed something inside that I definitely hadn't packed. It was the skull mask, cracked, still damp. And it smelled like iron. Underneath it was a folded piece of lined paper. The handwriting was messy, childlike. "This year, it's your turn." My hands went cold. The air around me felt heavy, like something was standing right behind me. Breathing on my neck, I turned. Nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt alive. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps just outside my bedroom. And every time I closed my eyes, I swore I heard that same whisper. "Do you want a trick?" Halloween came again faster than I expected. I told myself I wouldn't decorate this year. No lights, no candy, no anything. But as the night went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was outside, watching, waiting. At 11:59 p.m., I heard the knock, 3 times, slow, precise. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, from the other side of the door, trick or treat. The sound of the voice made every hair on my neck stand up. It wasn't outside anymore, it was inside the house. I turned, and in the reflection of the window, just for a second, I saw him. That same small figure standing behind me in the living room, the skull mask cracked, the black robe dripping wet, and those red, sticky hands clutching the burlap sack. He leaned close and whispered, "It's your turn." I tried to scream, but before I could, everything went dark. They found my front door wide open the next morning, candy scattered across the floor, but no sign of me. Only one thing left behind, a burlap sack sitting in the middle of the porch. Inside it was a single cracked skull mask and a note, written in messy, childish handwriting. "See you next Halloween. If you ever hear a knock past midnight on Halloween night, don't open the door, because not every trick-or-treater is looking for candy." Halloween used to be my favorite night of the year. The smell of pumpkins, the flicker of porch lights, and that familiar chill that reminded you winter was coming. But last Halloween, something changed. It was the first time I learned that when the clocks strike midnight, Halloween doesn't always end. I live in a small suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone decorates their lawns with fake cobwebs, tombstones, and animatronic skeletons that never quite work right. Last October 31st started perfectly. The air was crisp, the moon full, and kids filled the streets in costumes. Witches, superheroes, and the occasional scream mask kid who thought scaring adults was still funny. I'd taken the night off work to hand out candy. I'd even carved 3 pumpkins, one happy, one sad, and one angry, lined up on my porch steps with flickering tea lights inside. For hours the doorbell rang nonstop. Parents waved from the sidewalk. Kids screamed, "Trick or treat!" And I laughed, remembering how much I loved nights like this. By 10:30 the crowd had thinned. Only a few older teens wandered by, taking selfies and stealing decorations from people's yards. By 11, the street was dead quiet, except for the rustle of leaves and the occasional dog bark in the distance. I turned off my porch light, blew out the pumpkins, and sank into the couch. Halloween was over. Or it should have been. I must have dozed off during a horror movie, because when I opened my eyes again, the TV screen was blue and the clock on the wall read 12:46 a.m. And then came the knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks on my front door. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. Nobody knocks that late on Halloween night. I figured it was a drunk teenager, maybe a prank. Still, something about the sound unsettled me. It wasn't the quick, light rapping of a kid. It was deep, like someone using the side of their fist. I hesitated, then opened the door just a crack. There was no one there. The street was empty. But the pumpkins I'd blown out earlier were lit again, all 3 of them glowing a deep, unnatural orange. The faces I'd carved, happy, sad, angry, had changed. They were all smiling. Wide, jagged smiles that definitely weren't mine. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. I blew them out again and went back inside, locking the door. That's when I noticed the smell. Faint but distinct. Rotting pumpkin and smoke. Around 1:15 a.m., I glanced out my window and froze. Across the street, every single porch light had turned back on. Houses that had been dark for hours were now glowing orange again. Decorations lit up, fog machines humming, jack-o'-lanterns burning bright. And then, from somewhere far off, came the sound of laughter. Not cheerful laughter, the kind that echoes like it's coming through a tunnel. I stepped outside to check. The air felt different, thicker, colder. The street looked exactly as it had a few hours ago, except for one thing: the sky. It wasn't night anymore, or morning. It was this eerie, dark red twilight, like sunset frozen in time. No stars, no moon, just a blood-colored glow hanging above the rooftops. I walked down the street calling out to my neighbors, but nobody answered. Every house looked lived in, lights flickering, curtains swaying, but not a single sound came from inside. That's when I saw movement. At the far end of the street, near the cul-de-sac, someone was walking. A tall figure, wearing a tattered black cloak. They were carrying something that flickered in their hand, a lantern or maybe a pumpkin. I hurried back toward my house, heart pounding. The wind had picked up, carrying faint whispers, like 100 voices saying something I couldn't understand. When I reached my porch, I stopped dead in my tracks. There were children standing there, half a dozen of them, all in Halloween costumes, old-fashioned ones like from the 1950s, paper masks, torn capes, and each one held a candy bucket, empty. They just stared at me, their faces hidden behind cracked masks, a clown, a witch, a ghost with burnt edges. "Trick or treat," one of them said. His voice sounded wrong, too deep, too slow. I already gave out candy," I said, trying to smile. "Come back next year, okay?" The clown tilted his head, then all 6 of them spoke in unison. "It's still Halloween." I blinked. "What?" The witch took a step forward. Her paper mask was peeling, and beneath it I saw pale gray skin, cracked like old plaster. Her eyes were black, completely black. They began chanting, soft at first, then louder. "It's still Halloween. It's still Halloween." I stumbled back into the house and slammed the door. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone, but there was no signal, no service, and the clock on my wall was stuck at 11:59 p.m. I don't remember how long I stayed there, frozen by the door. Minutes, hours, and it didn't matter. Time wasn't moving. Then came another sound. Not knocking this time. Scratching. All along the sides of the house, like dozens of fingernails dragging slowly against the wood. I ran to the window and looked out. The kids were gone, but the street wasn't empty. Every house had someone standing in front of it now. Adults, kids, even shapes too tall to be human. Each one held a glowing pumpkin. And all their faces, masks, real skin, it didn't matter, were smiling the same jagged, impossible smile. They weren't moving, just watching. And then all at once every jack-o'-lantern on the street flickered out. Darkness swallowed everything. The next second they all lit up again, but they were closer. Now the figures stood at the ends of my driveway, then the edge of my porch, and then right outside the door. I backed away, grabbed a kitchen knife, breathing hard. Through the crack in the door, I saw their silhouettes. The shapes of dozens of people, my neighbors maybe, holding pumpkins that glowed brighter and brighter until my living room was bathed in orange light. And over all of it, a voice whispered through the house, "Halloween doesn't end until we say so." I woke up the next morning to sunlight pouring through my window. The clock read 7:02 a.m. For a few seconds I thought it had all been a nightmare, but when I stepped outside, the pumpkins on my porch were still burning, though I knew I'd blown them out. The street was quiet again. Normal. Kids' candy wrappers littered the sidewalks. Neighbors were out walking dogs like nothing happened. I almost convinced myself it was just exhaustion, until Mrs. Keaton waved from across the street. Her voice sounded cheerful as always. "Morning, great decorations last night." I smiled weakly. "Thanks, you too." She laughed. "Oh, honey, we didn't put any up this year." That's when I looked around. Every house on the block, empty porches, no cobwebs, no pumpkins, no skeletons, nothing, just mine. And my pumpkin still glowing bright orange in the daylight. The middle one, the one that had been angry, had changed again. Now it looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same nose, same smile. And carved right beneath it were 3 words. "It's still Halloween. If you're hearing this, remember, never blow out your pumpkins before midnight, because sometimes Halloween doesn't end. It just starts again. It's still Halloween." They say Halloween is the night when the dead can walk among us. But in my hometown, we grew up fearing something else. Not ghosts, not monsters, but a man made of straw with a pumpkin for a head. They called him the Pumpkin Man. And every Halloween, he came back to claim one person who forgot to carve a pumpkin. Last year, I forgot. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. Population maybe 3,000 if you counted the dogs. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's secrets, and everyone knew about him. The story went like this. Over 100 years ago, a farmer named Henry Doolin lost his crops to a fire on Halloween night. They said he went mad, carved a pumpkin with his bare hands, stuck a candle inside, and cursed the town before hanging himself in his field. Ever since, every October 31st, someone who doesn't carve a pumpkin goes missing. They say the Pumpkin Man takes them, stuffing them with straw, replacing their head with a carved pumpkin, and leaving them in the fields to rot. I never believed it. Until last Halloween. Halloween night was perfect that year. Cold air, orange sky, and kids running around dressed as witches and zombies. I'd been so busy with work that I completely forgot to buy pumpkins. No decorations, no lights, nothing. My neighbor, Mrs. Keaton, waved at me from across the yard earlier that day. She said, half joking, "You'd better carve one tonight or the Pumpkin Man'll get you." I laughed it off. Big mistake. Around 11 p.m., the trick-or-treaters were long gone. I was watching an old horror marathon when I noticed something strange outside my window. Across the street, in the empty lot near the woods, someone had placed a single pumpkin on the ground, carved perfectly with a crooked smile and deep hollow eyes. The weird thing was, it was facing my house. I went out with a flashlight, half expecting a prank. The pumpkin was huge and warm, like it had just been carved. Inside it was still a faint orange glow. I turned around to head back and froze. There were footprints in the dirt, bare feet, leading from the pumpkin to the tree line, and they weren't small. I tried to shake it off, locked the door, and went back inside. But just as I sat down, I heard it. A slow creak, like something heavy was brushing against the side of the house. Then a knock. Deep, solid, like a fist wrapped in straw. I went to the window and pulled back the curtain. At the edge of my porch light, I saw him, a tall figure standing in my yard. A man made of straw wearing a tattered brown coat. His head was a pumpkin, carved with that same crooked smile I'd seen earlier. And inside, a faint orange candle flickered. He just stood there staring. Then he tilted his head and raised one hand. In it was a carving knife. I backed away, locked every door, and turned off the lights. For a while, nothing happened. No movement, no sound, just the faint smell of smoke, like burning hay. Then I heard it. Crunch, 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 footsteps. Right outside my living room window. I could see his shadow move across the wall, tall, twisted, straw hanging from his sleeves. Then came his voice, low and ragged, like wind through cornstalks. "You forgot your pumpkin." The next sound was the back door creaking open. I ran upstairs, grabbed my phone, tried calling 911, but the line was dead. When I looked out my bedroom window, he was standing in my backyard holding something. A pumpkin. But this one had my face carved into it. I don't remember much after that. Only flashes. The front door slamming open. The sound of straw dragging across the floor. And that burning smell, thicker now, choking the air. When I woke up, I was in the middle of a field. The moon was full, rows of pumpkins surrounded me, glowing faintly. Something was sticking out of my arm, straw, and when I looked down, I realized I couldn't move. My skin felt stiff. My mouth was dry, filled with dirt. Then I saw him, the Pumpkin Man, standing over me. He crouched down, placed a pumpkin beside me, and whispered, "You're part of the harvest now." The last thing I remember was the sound of a match striking and orange light flooding the field. They found me the next morning, or what was left of me. My neighbor said she saw the field glowing all night, like it was on fire. When the sheriff arrived, there were no ashes, no body, just a scarecrow standing in the center of the field, stuffed with straw, a knife in one hand, and a carved pumpkin for a head. The pumpkin had a crooked smile, and deep inside it, a candle was still burning. So, if you ever celebrate Halloween, make sure to carve a pumpkin, because the pumpkin man always checks. And if your porch is dark, he'll carve one for you.